watching the Uz Report World. My name is Marifat Abdusharipova. Today, our guest is Sophie Ibbotson, Uzbekistan's tourism ambassador to the UK, who has been successfully accomplishing her career goals over the years and has been greatly contributing to the promotion of Uzbek brand with her amazing tweets. So first of all, I would like to know your views on the responsibilities of tourism ambassadors.
I see two roles as tourism ambassador. The first one, which is probably more obvious, is helping to raise awareness about Uzbekistan, to market and promote the country and particularly its tourism opportunities, so that more people hear about Uzbekistan, more people know about what the country can offer, and more people have a positive view and want to visit and do business with Uzbekistan. But I also think that I have a secondary responsibility, and that is to work very closely with the State Committee for Tourism and the private sector to advise them and help develop the best possible forms of tourism in Uzbekistan. And so that involves a certain amount of consultancy and advisory on product development, on services, on training, capacity building, so that the tourism we have in Uzbekistan is the best it can possibly be.
Countries all over the globe have suffered the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. What do you think has been the impact on the tourism of Uzbekistan?
The impact on Uzbekistan, as with most other countries around the world, has been completely devastating. And there are many, many reasons for this, including the closing of borders, the stopping of flights, and the very genuine fear that people have of travelling at the moment. There are lots of reasons that people aren't travelling. Uzbekistan, I think, has been particularly badly hit because, unlike, for example, some destinations in Europe, they weren't able to temporarily reopen in the summer months in their high season. The small amount of tourism, international tourism that Uzbekistan has had, has been at the very beginning of the year in January and February, and now a very small amount at the very end of the year. But for Uzbekistan, that is low season. Normally, the majority of tourists are coming between May and October, and for the majority of that time, Uzbekistan has been closed, so tourism businesses have not been able to take advantage of the very small number of tourists who are travelling.
Can you also suggest ways for overcoming the problems the pandemic has caused on tourism?
The first thing we have to be aware of is that this is not a problem which Uzbekistan can fix on its own. The government and the businesses in Uzbekistan could do everything absolutely perfectly. They could spend an infinite amount of money on the most inspired ideas, and it wouldn't fix the problem, because tourism is a very interconnected business. And particularly for international tourism, Uzbekistan is dependent on what is not happening in Uzbekistan itself, but what is happening in its source markets. So for tourists coming from Germany, a big part of the issue is what is happening in Germany. Same for UK, same for Russia. And we know that most, if not all, of Uzbekistan's source markets at the moment have got their own problems with COVID-19. They are stopping their nationals leaving, the flights aren't going. A lot of people have lost their jobs, they have got economic problems, and therefore they don't have the money to travel. And those aren't things which Uzbekistan can fix. There are, however, some things Uzbekistan can do to make sure that when international tourism resumes, that Uzbekistan captures a bigger share of the market. And one of those things is to do with health and hygiene and safety, because we know that is going to be the biggest concern for tourists when they start travelling again. They're wanting to go to places which they know are going to be safe, and that they know if they do have a problem, they can access healthcare or they can get home. So in that regard, Uzbekistan already has started rolling out its new health and hygiene protocols for tourism. It's very important that those are applied consistently across the country and that they are enforced. So it doesn't matter whether you go to a guest house in Karakol, Pakistan, or a restaurant in Fergana Valley, that you know that the standards will be consistent and to international quality. So that is one very important thing that the tourism sector within Uzbekistan has to do.
At what ease or difficulty Uzbekistan will overcome the problems the pandemic has caused, and in what period of time?
The first thing is we are starting from very, very low numbers. So I read a statistic earlier this week was saying that the total international passenger numbers in 2020 for the world are the same as they were 30 years ago. So it's not that we have just gone back to the levels of tourism in 2018 or 2017. We have gone a very, very long way back. And that means that recovery is going to be very slow as well. The predictions from UNWTO, the UN's tourism body, in May, June this year was to say, well, hopefully we will have some recovery by the end of 2020, and then by summer 2021, things will be starting to get back to normal. We now know, unfortunately, that that's not going to be the case, because we have already had, or are in the middle of, a second wave of COVID, and it looks like there will be a third wave in the spring, because although the vaccine is coming, it is not going to be fast enough to stop that. So realistically, I do not think there will be a big recovery of tourism in 2021. I think hopefully Uzbekistan will have some domestic tourism, because the situation within Uzbekistan is relatively stable, so people will be able and willing to travel within their own country. There may be some regional tourism, if, for example, the land border with Kyrgyzstan or Kazakhstan is open, so we can expect some local tourism. But I think the international numbers will be slow because of the COVID situation in the source countries, because of the restrictions, international travel restrictions being made in place still. So hopefully we will see a small amount of international tourism in 2021, but I do not think it will start recovering in earnest until 2022, really. But even that is dependent on large numbers of people being vaccinated internationally, not just in Uzbekistan, but everywhere. And that obviously is a huge logistical challenge, particularly for developing countries. Obviously, some of Uzbekistan's neighbours are in a much poorer situation in terms of their healthcare. And so that is going to be a factor for Uzbekistan too, is what is happening in Afghanistan, in Kyrgyzstan, in Tajikistan will have a knock-on effect on the pace of recovery in Uzbekistan too.
Does our country have the resources for this?
Probably the single most important thing is that the government in Uzbekistan is very committed to tourism. And you have a strong vision to be a leader in tourism, and the government commits a lot of resources, both in terms of money and in priority and human resources to delivering that. So I think that puts Uzbekistan in a much stronger place than many other destinations. You also have a very highly educated workforce who speak many languages and are very, very hospitable and often quite international looking. So those are good assets for the country's tourism sector and for its recovery. And then, of course, you have a huge variety of tourism products, some which are already developed, some which have potential. So you have everything, obviously, from your Silk Road UNESCO cities to your museums, your art galleries, your archaeological sites, and then your natural products as well. So you have your landscapes, fantastic opportunities for hiking, mountain biking, swimming, horse riding, skiing, nature and wildlife. I was talking yesterday to the Embassy of Uzbekistan in London about the Saiga Conservation Alliance and the Saiga antelope that you have. So there are all sorts of things that people will be very interested to see.
Can you also talk about Uzbekistan's touristic potential?
Uzbekistan fascinates me because the speed in which its tourism has developed to the current state. Mm-hmm. So I first went to Uzbekistan in 2010, so 10 years ago, when actually there was hardly any tourism in the country at all. And almost nobody outside of Uzbekistan, even those people working in travel publishing or as tour operators, very people knew anything about Uzbekistan. So already we have come a long way. The challenge now is to make sure that the tourism development that happens is done in a sustainable way. And by sustainable, I mean that it has to be economically viable, because if it doesn't make money, it won't last. It has to be environmentally responsible, because once you damage your ecosystem or your historic cities, you can't get that back. So it has to be environmentally responsible as well. And the third thing is it has to be socially acceptable, because tourism has to be for the benefit of Uzbekistan and Uzbekistan's people. And that means it has to create jobs, it has to create wealth for local people, and people have to feel that tourism is having a positive impact on their community. If a group of people, whether it's in a village or a town, feel that too many tourists have come, that they are damaging the place, that they are causing trouble, then they are not going to be welcome, and it is not going to be a good thing for Uzbekistan. So the tourism products we develop and the services we provide have to meet those three criteria: the social criteria, environmental and economic, in order for it to be a truly long-term sustainable product.
If we compare Uzbekistan with the neighboring Central Asian states, does the country have any advantages over other countries?
Uzbekistan has quite a lot of advantages over the neighbouring countries, and I will tell you briefly what they are. So one is the variety of tourism products. So you have everything now from what I think is the best ski resort in Central Asia, at Amisoy, through to your UNESCO cities. There isn't another country in the Central Asia region which has got the same variety. Kazakhstan has got its business tourism, but has underdeveloped its cultural tourism. Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan have got good opportunities for adventure tourism, but they don't have the same cultural and historical sites. And in the case of Tajikistan, although they have got some very important archaeological sites, they are not developed in a way yet which makes them attractive for tourism. Nobody can beat the Registan or the historic centre of Bukhara or the Ichin Kala. None of your neighbours can do that. The closest buildings which would rival those in any way are probably in Iran or Afghanistan, but for security reasons, people don't want to go to those destinations. So Uzbekistan has got the variety that none of its neighbours have. The second thing is the infrastructure now in Uzbekistan is better than in any of the neighbouring countries. Obviously the high-speed train, the road network generally is pretty good. Mm-hmm. Your new airport at Tashkent, and there are new airports, I understand, being built, or new airport terminals being built to upgrade the facilities at other airports. Your choice of hotels and the spread of hotels within the country is all better than the neighbouring countries. And the third thing is the international connectivity of Tashkent. With the visa-free regime, it makes it very easy for people to come. And in normal times, Tashkent has got a fast improving connection of international flights. I think probably the only other cities in the region which would have a comparable number of direct flight connections, possibly Astana or Almaty, but Tashkent and Uzbekistan have got much more to offer leisure tourists than Kazakhstan has. So the connectivity of Tashkent is much better than Bishkek or Dushanbe or Ashgabat. So it makes it easier and more affordable for tourists to get to Uzbekistan, and that is a big competitive advantage. It's definitely something we should continue to improve. I would like to see more of the European airlines flying not just to Tashkent, but to Bukhara, Samarkand, Urgench as well. And also I would like to see the entry of one of the budget airlines into the market, particularly somebody like Wizz Air, who already flies to Caucasus, already flies to Middle East. That would open up a new market for Uzbekistan as well.
So my next question is, if we consider the geographical location, the culture and the history of Uzbekistan, which types of tourism you think should be the priority of growth in our country? My
personal opinion is that Uzbekistan should use this quiet time to slightly reorientate its tourism sector to appeal to what we call niche and high-profile tourists, mm-hmm. rather than the budget mass market tourism that has been courting before. In the past, the objectives of tourism in Uzbekistan has been to increase volume. Every year we want to have more tourists. I think there should be a change now to say, actually, it's not that we want to have more tourists, we want to have higher value tourists, because the per capita spending of tourists who come to Uzbekistan at the moment is very, very low compared to competing destinations. And that means that you have all of the inconvenience of tourists, but you are not getting the optimal value from them. But if we reshape the tourism sector in terms of the products and offering to appeal to a higher spending tourist, then the people who come will be spending more, and that will be of much greater benefit to Uzbekistan than larger numbers. And it will also help address problems like the over-tourism that we have in the UNESCO cities in the summer, the shortage of flight capacity, and the shortage of high-quality hotels in some destinations in high season.
We know that some countries depend solely on tourism as the main source of revenue. How is the case with Uzbekistan? Do you think Uzbekistan can make tourism sector the main contributor of GDP?
I think Uzbekistan could, but I do not think it is a good idea. I think it is much more important for a country to have a diversified economy. And in Uzbekistan's case, that will include its gas, its mineral wealth, its agriculture, its manufacturing, its services industries, and its tourism. And the reason that the diversification is very important is what we have seen this year. There are things that will happen in the global economy that are completely beyond Uzbekistan's control, that can have a catastrophic impact on one or more industries. If you reorientated your economy so that tourism was your sole revenue generator, or even your majority revenue generator, and something like COVID hit, then it would completely devastate the country. As it is, because Uzbekistan has got a more varied economy, and its commodities, its agricultural produce, other things are still producing an income, the country is in a much stronger economic position than it would be if it was reliant on tourism.
I am sure you have visited most parts of Uzbekistan. And which place is the one you love visiting the most?
That is a very difficult question. The place that I have gone probably more times than any other is the Shahi Zinda in Samarkand. And that is a place I think I could go every day for the rest of my life and still never be bored, because there is so much beauty in the architecture, so many marvelous things in the engineering of the building, so much history. And it is a place I like to go to look at the decoration, but also for the people watching. It looks different every time of day, different times of the year. So that is a place which is very special to me personally. It is also somewhere I went the very first time I went to Uzbekistan, my first day in Samarkand in 2010. So I have a great passion for that. But really every part of Uzbekistan has got something unique and fabulous to offer. I took a group of journalists in September last year to Navoy region on a press trip. And everybody was always sort of shocked to me, saying, well, why are you not taking them to Khiva? Why are you not taking them to Samarkand? I mean, these are places which people go on holiday in Uzbekistan. I said, no. Navoy has fabulous things for people to see, from the Nurata Shrine and the fortress, to Aydakul and Tudakul lakes, to the historic sites in Kermana. Even in this one place which nobody thinks about for tourism, there is so many places to see, so many things to do, that actually it is possible to spend an entire week on holiday in Navoy and have a fantastic time. And I would say the same is true for pretty much every region of Uzbekistan. Yes, it is fabulous to go to Samarkand, to Bukhara, but I would be very happy taking a group to Surkhandarya for a week, or to Fergana for a week, or to Jizak. Any part of Uzbekistan has incredible history, incredible culture, beautiful nature, and can definitely be a strong itinerary.
So you think there are some places which have the potential to become famous touristic attractions like Bukhara, Samarkand and Khiva, right?
They can be famous for different reasons. So I was very excited to discover recently that you have something called Dark Star, which is the deepest cave system in the world. And I think that is in Surkhandarya, in the mountains there. So for anybody who is interested in mountaineering and caving, the fact that you have the deepest cave system in the world is extraordinary. And that would make, if they knew about it, would come to Uzbekistan more than anywhere else. The same when I was in Amesoy in February, the gentleman, I have forgotten his name, a Scandinavian gentleman who is managing the ski resort at the moment, was saying to me, Amesoy and particularly the Chimgan Mountains has the best snow powder anywhere in the world. It is better than Japan. Again, if people know that, they will come to ski in Uzbekistan as opposed to more famous destinations. Amesoy is not the same tourism product as the Registan. It appeals to very different people. But if you are somebody who travels all over the world for skiing, why would you not come to Uzbekistan? If it has got the best powder, obviously you should go there first.
Thank you so much for your interview. We hope to see you in Uzbekistan soon.